All right, I'm going to take a quick piss break.
Yeah, I'll do the same, actually. That's a good idea.
Fires, Mike Sims, Walker, knocked down.
Oh my God! Davis is going running all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
In trouble. He's going to be sacked. No, gets away. He runs, gets away again, goes to the 40, gets away again.
Jackson takes it himself. Look at him dart back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankles.
I have never seen this before in my life.
Still looking, firing, near corner. It's caught.
Denver, unbelievable. Welcome to the fourth down fiasco.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fourth Down Fiasco, your go-to podcast for all things football. Yes, it is an exciting time to be alive as a football fan. The NFL just completed their first full slate of preseason games. The training camp drama is on full display right now, and we are just a few weeks away from starting the season. That also means that college football is around the corner as well for anyone who is a fan of any of those teams. And did we mention that we are just a few weeks away from the playoffs for the European League of Football? Yes, we are balls deep in that season too, just like your mama on a cruise ship after her divorce. And with me is my co-host and one of the rising stars of the podcast industry, the tiny titan, Tanner Vinsky. No dubious Danny Weber this week, but Tanner and I have covered Danny once, and we can cover him again. That's fine. Remember, Danny, you owe us one now. I like my beer with a high ABV, and you know where to find it. So, as always, we ask that you rate us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's the best way for us to grow the show. We would greatly appreciate it. Tell us where you're giving us the review from. We always are interested in that stuff. And the rundown of today's show is like this. Segment 1 is all the NFL drama you could ever ask for. We've got contract holdouts, league news, and plenty of updates there. And in segment 2, we will cater to our international audience and review Week 12 slate of games for the European League of Football. 3 upsets, plenty of close games. It was a great week, definitely one of the better weeks for the ELF as far as the content for us viewers. So plenty to look forward to, but with that, it's time to dive in like Katie Ledecky, and I want to start here. Tanner, you survived the hurricane. You're alive. You're with us today. What's up?
It was actually not bad here at all. It was really nice. We got like a little bit of rain. It got downgraded to a tropical storm, so we were chilling. But people still raided the grocery stores anyways.
Yeah, you gotta love that end of the world feeling that you see whenever you go to a Walmart right before some sort of a disaster is supposed to hit.
Yeah, right.
So, well, speaking of disasters hitting, or I guess in this instance, disasters being avoided, Mark Andrews was in a car accident. If you're listening to this on Thursday, he was in a car accident on Wednesday on his way to training camp. He is okay. The team has already reported he has no injuries. Basically, it was a small accident. He still made his way to the facility, got checked out by team doctors, got the A-OK, and they are expecting him to participate fully, even as early as today, Thursday, if you're listening, but if not, early this upcoming week. On top of that, some more breaking news, or I guess big news from this week. Tavon Austin, the greatest college highlight reel of all time, has retired from the NFL. How does that make you feel, Tanner?
I was shocked he was still playing, was my reaction to that. I thought he retired a couple of years ago, to be honest. But no, Tavon Austin at West Virginia was awesome, Oh, yeah. So.
Yeah. Hey, Tavon Austin as a Cowboy, it was also awesome, that season and a half that we were so blessed to have him as. I saw the news and I had the same reaction.
Maybe 200 yards.
And they probably all came in one game too.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, Mr. Chunk Yardage himself, Tavon Austin, Mr. Ticket to the House, West Virginia, greatest highlight reel ever, retired. I was sad to see it because I remember that highlight reel very vividly because around that time I was doing a lot of high school sports coverage, and I was trying so hard to recreate the epicness of that video, and I just couldn't because I was a child. But
yeah.
And then what was that?
I didn't speak. Did my mic come through or something?
Oh yeah, yeah. You cut in, you cut out. But talking about Tavon. Uh-oh, you're still cutting out on me, Tanner. What's going on? All right,
Keep it rolling. Try to figure it out. Okay. Interesting. I'm not sure what happened there.
I don't know either. Maybe it's a little bit of aftermath from the hurricane. Maybe there's a line down somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Still. But last of our big, almost breaking-ish news. This actually is breaking news because we found out about it like an hour and a half ago. Jordan Addison carted off with an ankle injury. They're thinking that it's not too bad, but are the Vikings cursed?
Oh, absolutely. They've always have been.
I mean, between that and the JJ McCarthy news, there's just, and for those of y'all who don't know, JJ McCarthy out for the season with a knee injury. Do you know if it's an ACL, MCL?
I think they said it was an AC, or no, here I see it now. It's a meniscus.
Ooh, okay.
So,
gotcha.
I mean, anything in the knee was going to be bad, but he'll probably miss the whole season.
Yeah, they've already ruled him out for the entire season, which sucks for Vikings fans. And that means that they are now stuck with New York Jets legend Sam Darnold at quarterback.
Yeah, well, little does the NFL know that this is the Sam Darnold revival year,
Dog, you know what? Hey, I'll say this. I don't think that Sam Darnold is a terrible quarterback. I genuinely don't. I think that he's a very formidable backup. If Sam Darnold is your backup, you're doing a great job. But I think that I don't think that Minnesota is going to be great. I think that they're probably still going to have a losing record. But I think that people will be pleasantly surprised with Sam Darnold's performance because when you give him a competent wide receiver, which he didn't have in his time with the Jets, makes a difference.
Yeah, I think I've been telling everybody this because I've been doing a lot of fantasy draft recently, and pretty much everybody's like, oh, well, Justin Jefferson, late first round pick. Like, you're not taking him with like a top 5 pick anymore because of the quarterback situation. I'm like, Justin Jefferson's going to eat no matter who's the quarterback under center, still going to have an insane fantasy year. And I think the Vikings offense will still be good, even with going from JJ McCarthy to Sam Darnold. I don't think it's going to be explosive, but it's not going to be big plays. They're still going to have things going on. Now, I think the Vikings have a much stronger chance of getting 4 to 6 wins than they did before, as opposed to, maybe being somewhere in that like 7 to 9 range.
Yeah.
But it's really not going to look too much different. I mean, they were going to be throwing a rookie in there regardless. This is supposed to be a rebuild year. Just hopefully it doesn't affect JJ's career too much, having a year off of recovery and essentially not getting a rookie year.
Well, and if you're JJ McCarthy, as much as you want team success, the last thing you could ever ask for in this world is, there's still that 10% chance that Sam Darnold becomes Sam Darnold of old. College Sam Darnold starts doing a bunch of crazy shit, because everybody always has that 1 year, I feel like, and you just never know whenever it's going to hit, and that'd be awkward. That would be a if Darnold puts up a wicked stat line, 4,000 plus passing yards, a decent touchdown to interception ratio, and say that the Vikings end up being 9-8, maybe slide in at that last wild card spot or something like that. Then if you're JJ McCarthy, that's the last thing you want, because I don't think that McCarthy has the profile to work through that.
Probably not, but I mean, I think it would need to be like an insane season from Darnold for the Vikings to give up on McCarthy. Like, Darnold would probably have to, throw 40 touchdowns, 4,500 yards plus, and then win a playoff game. If he doesn't check all 3 of those boxes, I don't think they would give up on JJ McCarthy, especially since they spent, what was it? Was the 10th overall pick on him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was something like that. Yeah. So I don't think they would give up on him. I think they would probably think about, can we use Sam Darnold for trade bait? Maybe to a team like the Browns who likes to make bad, trade decisions.
Well, hey, calm down. We'll get to the Browns later on. We'll get to the Browns later on. I mean, I'm there with you. I think that the playoff game. Yeah, if Darnold wins a playoff game, then it's like, all right, how do you bench the guy?
Yeah.
But I look at more of it from the standpoint of I don't think that they would give up on McCarthy, but I could see a world where, if Darnold, because when you have Justin Jefferson, the possibility is always there. I could potentially throw for 4,000 yards if I'm throwing to Justin Jefferson, and if Jordan Addison's injury is not that bad and he's able to come back and everything. But I could see it being one of those things of, a very slow, hey, we're going to usher him back into the system. We don't want to re-hurt him. And the next thing you know, next season, we're halfway through it and he's still on the bench and fans are like, what's going on? And it's like, well,
yeah,
Darnold's still kind of winning games. So I don't know. I just think that it's messy, but Minnesota's always messy. So no qualms. Speaking of wide receiver news, Ayuk still in San Fran. We're not super sure. Supposedly they're working on a deal to keep him long term, but I also saw in multiple other articles that he agreed to specific terms with a trade to the Steelers. So I guess it's hey, if we can't reach something, then I'm going to Pittsburgh. You're the Pittsburgh guy, so what have you heard?
That's pretty much verbatim, I think, what the situation is at this moment. I think San Francisco wants to keep him because they don't like the trade package to Pittsburgh, but Ayuk has said, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to play. So I think they're trying to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. So they're either going to get the contract hashed out and Ayuk's going to play, or they're going to send a trade deal over to Pittsburgh and Ayuk's going to play for Pittsburgh. Obviously, I would prefer the second scenario, just because I think Ayuk would be great in Pittsburgh. And it also seems like San Francisco is not going to be getting much of a haul for him if they trade him to Pittsburgh because they're not super happy with the Pittsburgh trade package. But it seems like Ayuk doesn't really want to go anywhere else. He either just wants to stay in San Francisco with a new contract, or he wants to get traded to Pittsburgh because they're going to give him the money, and all the other suitors that the 49ers have found can give him that money, but he doesn't want to go to those teams. And so we'll see. I would imagine at this point it's probably most likely that he stays in San Francisco. I'm sure they're just going to pay him the money and say, you know what, we'll cross the bridge when we get there with Brock Purdy's contract, and hopefully he won't walk in free agency. But I think that's a big reason why they haven't paid him, is because I think they're really worried about how much money they're going to have to give Brock.
Yeah, I mean, truly, yeah, and it's funny. The NFL, came out with their top players list or whatever, and don't get me wrong, I try my best not to be a Brock Purdy hater on this podcast because I think that he's very formidable for what he is. But they had him at some ridiculous. They had him as, I think, the third or fourth highest rated quarterback in the NFL. And yeah, he's going to demand that money. He's going to demand that level of money just because that's what the market is. And quarterbacks keep getting paid more and more and more and more, like exponentially more than any other position. But honestly, if I'm San Fran, you can find Brock Purdy in other drafts. I don't think that there's anything that Brock Purdy brings to the table that makes you not pay Brandon Ayuk personally.
I don't know. San Francisco's been in QB purgatory. That's the issue. Is what happens if they don't pay Purdy? Who do they end up getting? Because they're going to keep picking late in the draft. They're not going to be somebody who's able to get, even like a top 15 draft pick where you hope, okay, well, maybe like there's 4 really good QBs this draft and there's a bunch of teams who don't really need them. Maybe we get somebody in like the 12 range if we trade up. That's not going to happen again. And with where this roster is, I think you need Purdy because they're definitely not going to look out and just get some late round draft pick and be like, holy shit, this guy's actually really good.
Yeah, they're not going to get Mr. Irrelevant to be relevant again.
Yeah, exactly. Like that just doesn't happen. And with our contract situation, then it's like, okay, well, do we get a free agency QB? Probably not, because you can't afford to get a free agency QB who's going to be as good as Brock Purdy. I mean, look at the money that Tua's going to get, and I think Brock Purdy's better than Tua. I don't think it's by a ton, but I think they're in that similar range. I think he's better. He's safer with the ball.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the big thing with Purdy that has made him so viable for this offense is truly they have so many weapons between Debo and Ayuk and CMC and George Kittle, and their offensive line is disgusting. And then they've got a great defense. And so it's literally just like you can plug and play any quarterback into that role that as long as they aren't throwing interceptions, you will be successful. But that's also on the flip side of that, the unfortunate thing about what San Francisco has created is it is a team that is so non-quarterback dominant, which we just don't see, that you can't really, to your point, there isn't a free agent that you can afford if you keep the team the way that it's currently constructed. But I also think that as soon as you pay Purdy and you start taking away the Brandon Ayuks of the world and the Debo Samuels and other people that they can't afford because Brock is going to demand top 5 quarterback money, as does any top 15 quarterback does whenever it's time to re-sign, that is eventually going to screw their team.
I just don't think it's going to screw them harder than if they don't pay Brock. Because the issue is when you go back to the CJ Beathard's and the Nick Mullins and the Jimmy Garoppolos of the world, yeah, you can compete and yeah, you can look good, but you will not be able to win a Super Bowl with those guys. 100% you are not getting the chip with that guy. The 49ers went into overtime against the Chiefs last year.
Yeah.
They could have won that Super Bowl, and it wasn't really that Brock Purdy had a horrific game. I mean, Brock Purdy still even played pretty well against a really staunch Chiefs defense. So I don't think you want to go back to QB purgatory. And I think if you go back to QB purgatory, I think you're essentially you're essentially throwing in the towel for the championship window. You're saying, this isn't it. We're not going to win with these pieces. Let's try to do it again with some other pieces. Let's try to completely rehaul. I think you need to just trust that Purdy can turn it up a level, and he can do that, because if they get rid of Purdy, they're not getting anybody close to his talent again. And even though Shanahan can make people look efficient and look good, like I said, you're never going to win a Super Bowl with a Garoppolo, a Nick Mullins, or a CJ Beathard,
No, yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I do wonder, though, and I'm spacing on his name right now. You might know him. He was the backup quarterback on the Colts for a little while. I want to say his name's like Jacoby or Colby or something like that.
Are you thinking Jacoby Brissett, the guy who's in New England right now?
Yeah, I would imagine that. I mean, you could probably get him on a cheap deal, well, I guess he just signed with New England, so you probably can't get him, period. But that type of a player, though, they were a good backup quarterback somewhere. They had success whenever they were put into the system, someone who's a step above, say, like a Cooper Rush for Dallas, someone who's a step above that, because I think Jacoby is, because he, at least has a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of escapability. Again, I don't think that Brock Purdy brings that much to the table is the problem to warrant the kind of
the
money
issue with that though
the team.
Is Jacoby. I think Brock, like I think Jacoby's closer to a Garoppolo than he is to a Brock, right?
Really?
And the thing is with Jacoby is, even though he doesn't turn the ball over that much, or like the thing is Jacoby plays safe football. Mm-hmm. And, you can probably win a good amount of games with Jacoby Brissett. The issue with him is you're never going to win a game because of Jacoby. You're just not going to lose because of him. So what ends up happening is he can't really stretch the ball down the field. Absolutely. I mean, there has been a couple. I mean, I'd have to go look at those stats and those things, because I don't really remember the playoffs from last year too much, to be honest. I mean, it's been a year. I'm pretty sure Brock performed statistically well in the playoffs. I mean, and again, like there's this happens a lot with, any sort of sports discourse, is somebody becomes so overrated that eventually they become underrated. Where it's everybody talks about, oh well, they're not that good, people overrate them, they conflate all these things, there's all these bad things, and everybody then takes that bit and like, oh yeah, you know what, Brock is overrated, he is shitty, like he isn't that good, and everybody starts going through it and it's like, okay, well now we moved too far in one direction. Yes, Brock is overrated compared to the top 6, 7, 8 QBs in the league, but Jacoby Brissett is like, we move the needle too far in one direction a lot of times when we talk about discourse, and the NFL is not too terrible about it as compared to like the NBA. I mean, the NBA take players who are actually pretty damn good, and then it's like, oh well, why the hell would you even like want to start James Harden? Why not just start fucking Bones Highland? And it's like, okay, well, we're going too far, like
we're down. Well, okay. I mean, again, I hear what you're saying.
That happens a lot with sports,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. My thing is because I will say he did perform well at the playoffs. Like I don't need to look up stats for that, but again, whenever you have two borderline Pro Bowl, 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers, you have a Pro Bowl tight end and a Pro Bowl running back who is arguably the greatest just threat in and of itself in the NFL, offensive threat in and of itself in the NFL, you're going to be successful as long as you take care of the ball. And that's more of what I'm arguing is I'm totally fine if the demise of San Francisco is at the hands of Big Cock Brock, because I hate San Francisco. But I do wonder, though, if you pay Brock all this money and then you're not able to, you can't bring back Ayuk, and then you probably won't be able to afford one of either Debo or CMC. And then you're just dealing with, you got Kittle and then you got one of those 2 weapons, and game plans will then change. People will be able to adjust because they're going to be like, okay, well, we know the ball is going to go to 1 to 2 guys and that's it. And I wonder what Brock looks like then. So I guess for me more so is San Francisco, do they really see Brock as this almost, a true top 10 to top 5 quarterback that is a franchise guy that, hey, even in the years where we don't have very good talent, he's going to make the talent around him better. And I haven't seen any reason to believe that he would make the talent around him better, is what I'm getting at.
Let me help you put this into perspective. So I looked up both Brock Purdy. Joe Burrow has also had a situation like Brock Purdy, where he's had a good running game. Like there's been pieces was because there was an Evan McPherson like masterclass, like that guy was kicking his ass off and won that game.
Dropped like 15 points and like
Brock Purdy's
plus. Yeah.
So Brock Purdy's been in 6 games. Brock Purdy has had a passer rating across these 6 games, has had a passer rating of 96.2 with 1,343 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception in the playoffs. Joe Burrow has been in 7 playoff games. He has a passer rating of 93.8 with 1,826 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So Brock Purdy has a better passer rating and a better touchdown to interception ratio with 1 less game. It's about as close as you can get. So if you say, well, what happens if you get rid of all of Brock Purdy's weapons, you put him in the system alone, and you have him by himself? If you go that way, well, yeah, exactly. What happens if you do the same with Joe Burrow? And now we're going another level where all of a sudden you take the conversation of, well, Brock's overrated. Brock doesn't really do these things. Is it really worth it to pay Brock? But then when he has similar stats to Joe Burrow, what do you say about Joe Burrow, right? Like,
Okay.
oh, well, should he pay Joe Burrow? I mean, look at his stats. I mean, it's the same as Brock Purdy's. I mean, what if you take all those pieces, you know?
Fair enough. I do want you to keep that same energy whenever we start comparing Dak Prescott and Pat Mahomes, but that's a conversation for a different day.
Simmer down.
oh, now it's time to simmer down. Well, hey, speaking of Cowboys news, here's a good segue. Since we're talking about wide receivers who aren't getting paid, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons actually took to Twitter and guaranteed that CeeDee Lamb will be there for week 1. So whether if that's that he resigns, or
yeah, he just
decides. Hey, you know what? If I had to play for Jerry Jones, I'd probably resign too. So whether if that is he resigns or he decides to gamble on himself and says, okay, contract year, let's go, let's get it. Micah Parsons is guaranteeing that CeeDee Lamb is coming back. So as a Cowboys fan, I want to see him there week 1. But also I'm doing this fake bullshit where I act like I'm boycotting the team. So I won't see him week 1, even though I'll see him week 1. I definitely didn't watch this past week's preseason game.
Yeah. I feel like Micah Parsons has just got to stop talking, right?
Yes, for the love of God.
Doesn't that kind of seem like a big thing with him?
Oh, yes.
It's like just I'm sure CeeDee Lamb's your boy. I'm sure you understand what's going on in his life to a good degree. But let this be a CeeDee Lamb situation. Don't be the guy that comes in and is like, yo, don't worry. I know for sure he's coming in week 1. And it's like, well, do you? I mean, you're not him. Like, just let him figure it out. And I don't know. It would be terrible if the Cowboys can't get the deal done with Dak or CeeDee Lamb. Then all of a sudden you lose Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons. I mean, like, that team transforms entirely without those 3 players.
Oh,
so I'm hoping that they do get the deal done, because the Cowboys are going to be terrible if they don't get it done. Like, they need those 3 guys.
Agreed. No, I'm right there with you. Without those 3 guys, we would be picking in the top 10, maybe the top 5, honestly. Because, our next best receiver would be Brandon Cooks, and Cooper Rush would be throwing to him. So not saying, hey, no disrespect to my boy Cooper Rush, because he's only lost 1 game as a Cowboys starter in his career. Best backup quarterback in the league. But I don't want Cooper Rush as my throughout the season starting quarterback. And after looking at game notes from this past preseason game, because we're still boycotting. Trey Lance was ass. He was absolute ass out there. It didn't help that receivers were also dropping balls, but he was very inaccurate in that preseason game.
I don't think Trey Lance is starting if Dak goes away.
Yeah, I don't. If Trey Lance is starting on this team, then we're fucked. That means that we're going to have a lottery pick, which is what it is. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I wish Micah would, stop talking, stop podcasting, stop all of it, and just fucking play. But whatever.
I don't want to get too much into a tangent. You said lottery pick, and it's like, how pissed would he be if, like, Cowboys have a terrible season? They're like, oh, we're going 4-13, and the NFL all of a sudden is like, hey, we're going to implement the lottery rule. Now you're not locked into the spot. Now now it's all up to a lottery on what pick you get. I gotta stop
calling them lottery picks. I watch too much basketball. I'm even wearing a basketball jersey right now. Like, I live, breathe, and sleep and eat basketball, which is ironic because we're on a football podcast, but here we are.
Right. Hey, we talked just a little behind the scenes. We did try to convince Danny at the beginning to make it a sports podcast, not just a football one. So the reason we're covering the Elf, you got to thank Danny, because if he didn't step in, we would be absolutely talking about basketball. Yeah.
Well, hey, I've enjoyed my time with the Elf, so I'm not mad about it. But
I have too. Yeah.
I also wouldn't have been mad if we would have done like the front court fiasco, for basketball season. That could have been fun. But other things that are a fiasco, since we're talking about it, New York Jets, acquired Hassan Reddick over the offseason, and Hassan Reddick is now wanting to leave. He is requesting a trade out of New York. Hasn't even played a game. I don't think he's reported to training camp either, if I remember correctly. Well, I mean, what do you make of this?
I think it's one of those rare situations with a contract dispute where I think both parties are at fault. Hassan Reddick, like what ended up happening is the Eagles traded for Hassan Reddick, and the Eagles told Hassan Reddick, or like, I guess the Eagles told the Jets, like, hey, he's not playing without a new contract, but if you want him, we'll trade him to you anyways. Mm-hmm. So they go ahead and do that. Hassan Reddick gets there and says, oh, well, I want a new contract. And the Jets are like, well, no, we need to actually see that you're going to like participate in our team. We have players who are holding out we have players who need new contracts who are playing like minutes for us right now. They're playing in preseason games. They're doing things for us. We're not going to give you preferential treatment because we traded for you. And Hassan said, no, screw that. I want my contract. Like, I'm not going to play for you unless you give me my new contract. So the Jets put themselves in this between a rock and a hard place where it's, okay, do we either pay Hassan Reddick to get him playing, and then we send a message that this is okay to the rest of our players who we haven't paid yet, or not pay him and we don't get anything out of Hassan Reddick and he just sits the whole season? And at the end of the day, it really is kind of the Jets' fault for that, because if you knew that was happening with the players in your team, why didn't you get that figured out before you traded for Hassan Reddick? Yeah. And I also think it's kind of one thing with Hassan Reddick too, where it's like, why not just show up to training camp and see how things go? Like, maybe if you just get into the building, like maybe they just give you the contract, right. Like the fact that you've never even been to training camp, like you don't know any of your teammates or anything like that. Like,
yeah,
like at least show up once, and it's like you're still going to get paid. Yeah, like go figure it out, and then have the team help advocate for you. But right now, there's just this guy who's never played on this team, and he's like, "Well, I'm not playing for it." So none of the other players on that team are going to look out for him, because it's like, bro, you haven't even like been in the facility. So again, I think it's kind of on both of them. One, why would you trade for him? And that's it. But two, it's also like, hey, you're not actually playing any games yet. Why not go practice at the training facility and be in football shape and still just tell the guys, like, I need my new contract done before the season?
Yeah.
And they probably would prioritize that, because I think Hassan Reddick, should get a new contract. He is a pretty good pass rusher.
He's a phenomenal pass
But it's also like, put in some of the work first, I don't know. It's weird. I don't want to put the blame entirely on one party, but it's just a stupid situation that like could have easily been avoided.
Oh, for sure. No, I like your analysis of it. And yeah, the only player that I've seen from the Jets that has come out and said anything actually is Mr. Tinfoil Hat himself, Aaron Rodgers, who basically was like, hey, look, no harm, no foul. I understand money's money, which, as a guy who chased the bag for several years instead of trying to win Super Bowls, makes sense. Sorry, that's my little
makes sense. He came out. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell I don't like Aaron Rodgers on this pod? But no, I'm with you 100%. I think that the way that you described it paints it very well of, yeah, there's, two parties, both of whom have made some kind of dumb mistakes as far as getting these numbers ready. And, a little bit of foresight goes a long way.
Have you ever seen the tweet where it's like a Packers fan talking about when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, where it's like, oh yeah, Mahomes is out there like winning Super Bowls, playing playoff games. Meanwhile, my QB's in a shack somewhere smoking crack.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Or if you're a Jets / formerly a Green Bay Packers fan, that's like, yeah, my quarterback's out there telling people to ignore science and to take horse tranquilizers instead of just getting a normal shot, but it's fine.
Hey, the horse tranquilizer, probably more fun, so.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you're ever deciding I don't want to be on this earth anymore, I bet that horse tranquilizer is great.
Yeah, I'll put you down.
It will put you down 6 feet under. Oh man. We've got a lot of weird, I feel like, Midwestern news. We just kind of one after another. And another thing, Lions Pro Bowl running back Jahmyr Gibbs is injured, but good news for him is, according to Dan Campbell, it shouldn't be that bad. I'm trying to figure out exactly what the injury is. Oh, it was a hamstring.
Yeah, hamstring injuries usually don't take too long. He might miss like the first 2 to 4 games, hopefully.
Yeah, that's what Campbell was saying.
I hope he doesn't miss too much time. I think, like I said, this Lions offense should be electric this year. So It would suck if Jahmyr Gibbs misses a lot of time or re-aggravates the injury and that gets stifled, because Jahmyr Gibbs was good last year and he was a lot of fun to watch, and I would like for him to play as much of the season as possible.
As someone who struggled with hamstring injuries, I can be the first one to tell you that, number one, as long as it's not torn, you should be fine, which it doesn't sound like it's torn. If it were a torn hammy, then he might be out until playoffs.
Yeah.
Maybe even the season, depending on how fast he heals. But on top of that, man, hamstrings are tough, man, because you always think that you're ready to come back and you really probably need an extra week or 2 of rest. And they are such a difficult, nagging injury. So I hope that the Lions are cautious with it. And, if you think he's going to come back in 2 to 4 weeks, have him come back in 6. That'd be my best advice of, the rest of that team. There's so much talent on that team. They'll be fine. Even if in those first 6 weeks you go 3-3 or something like that, you'll still make the playoffs. You'll still be okay. You want your best players no matter what. And I would just hate for them to bring him back in week 3 or 4 and he just continues to re-aggravate it. Because, again, it's one of those injuries that you think you're good until you're not. And it always comes back to creep up on you. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my Definitely. Sad little I'm no longer an athlete spiel. And then lastly,
that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Lastly, in our weird Midwestern news, we did save the best for last, the worst for last. The Cleveland Browns are just gonna brown, bro. The Browns are gonna brown always and forever. Mike Hall Jr. Threatened his fiance with a loaded gun and is still practicing with the team. So it'll be potentially 2 pseudo felons on the Browns with track records.
Well, 3 because they got Jameis too.
Did Jameis really get a felon for stealing the crab legs?
No. He did something with a woman in an Uber.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, Brown's gonna brown, bro.
Yep.
That's crazy. Yeah. 3 not convicted, not completely, at least in Deshaun Watson's case, but 3, I'm gonna call them pseudo felons. 3 pseudo felons on your team. Not a good look. Typical Cleveland.
No, not at all. I hope that this guy gets honestly, quite frankly, just gets arrested. I think that's the best case scenario. Yeah, because the police report is absolutely horrific. I listened to it this morning because I think it happened late last night. It was just awful, terrible situation, horrible thing for anybody to have to go through. And if he gets like a career in the NFL, like that just sucks. Like that's just terrible that you could do something that just blatantly evil and just not get away with it. It would be awful.
Yeah, because you said on the police report he was like threatening to shoot her in front of the kids, right?
Yeah, so I think they have a daughter or a son. I think they're young. They witnessed like the whole thing. The grandma was there as well. The mom's mother, and was like, telling him to not do it, and he was, threatening to shoot because he had a gun to her head the entire time. threatening to shoot her until the police came, and it was just like, like lifelong trauma for everybody involved. Just absolutely awful.
That's a very unfortunate testament to the NFL as a league as a whole, because I mean, that is beyond egregious. Some of these might be like lesser examples, but like even just the amount of just domestic disputes where, there's zero punishment for guys. But then, you don't let Calvin Ridley play for an entire season because he was gambling on himself. It just, just the checks and balances and the judiciary system within the NFL is just so out of whack. And actually, I was talking to Sarah the other day because she had mentioned there's a documentary that came out recently about how poorly they treat the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, and that, it's basically a full-time job, but you get paid like $25K or $30K or something, like poverty wages like that.
Oh, yeah, you get paid terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole time.
Well, it's because they use it to market, it's your career portfolio.
Right. And that's the way that they treat it. And, and she was telling me all of these things, and I was like, I know. And she was like, what do you mean, I'm like, Cowboys fans have known this for decades. I'm like, we were able to see that even back on the show that they had, that, they weren't getting paid. They get treated awfully. And she was like, and nobody's ever stepped in. I'm like, no, because they make the league money. And to your point, I'm like, and a lot of, basically the way that they market it to the women who audition is, well, hey, it sucks, but you do 2 years of this and you can be a Victoria's Secrets model. You can do this, exactly. You can do that. And they feed into it. And that I'm letting you know that DCC to, America's Next Top Model pipeline is not really there. It's kind of a bullshit dream. But, it's just, it is sad to see how the league handles all these situations. They really are just, it's all about the money. And the way that the Browns are treating it is, if Hall can play. And that brings
Nothing
us
else
more
matters.
money if we win. Yeah. And it's just sad to see.
Jimmy Haslam will talk to his wife and daughter again and said, oh, well, they thought it was okay, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So
I was like, all right, man.
Ridiculous. Well, I hate to end segment one on such a salty note. Do you have anything else to add before we kick it to commercial?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything for the NFL. So what is it? Only 2 more weeks, right?
Yep. 3 more weeks. And, you and I talked about this before we started recording, but for those of y'all listening, no, we're not going to go through the preseason games. I'm sorry. We've got bigger fish to fry than talking about preseason games. But yeah, cool. We'll kick it to commercial break and we'll be right back right after this.
You're the proud owner of a business and you've got it all. The hustle, the bustle, and the occasional office kitchen mishap that turns into an alarm triggering emergency.
Whoa!
But fear not. Western States Fire Protection is here to turn your workplace into a disaster-free zone. Our in-house team handles everything from fire sprinklers to alarms, monitoring, inspections, extinguishers, and more. Visit WSFP.com to request a quote.
Are you looking for a podcast to advertise your business? Well, you're in luck. Here at the Fourth Down Fiasco, we're looking for show sponsors. Whether you want to be a platinum sponsor and be mentioned at the beginning and end of every episode, or you just want a simple 30 or 60-second ad, we got you covered. If you're interested in having a spot on our show, you can reach us at fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. That's fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. We are excited to hear from you and even more excited to have you on the show. Join the Fiasco family now.
And welcome back to the Fourth Down Fiasco, your go-to podcast for all things football. And yes, when we say all things football, we really do mean it, because right now we're going to be talking about the European League of Football, which, our international listeners, they know all about that. But if you're one of our domestic listeners here in the United States and you've made it to segment 2 and you're thinking to yourself, what the hell is going on? Brother, let me tell you, this league is fun. It is fast. They hit hard. And this past week, we actually had a really solid slate of games, a lot of parity, which, we've had some interviews with some of the players from the ELF, and their big complaint is they wish that there was more parity in this league. And hey, we had 3 upsets and multiple close games this past weekend. So Tanner, do you want to run through those scores real quick for us?
Yep. Prague Lions go to Verivar and they get their first one of the season, 9-6. Madrid goes to Frankfurt and they lose in shocking fashion, and actually kind of in a blowout fashion, lose by 3 scores, 20-37. Raiders Tyrol pull off an upset over the Stuttgart Surge, 45-42. Paris Musketeers blow out the Cologne Centurions, 57-7. Barcelona Dragons, Munich Ravens. We don't need to talk about it. Wrocław Panthers lose a close one to the Berlin Thunder, 34-36. And the Hamburg Sea Devils and the Rhine Fire. Not as much as we don't need to talk about it as the Barcelona Dragons and Munich Ravens, but almost that bad, 2-51. In favor of Rhine.
Yeah. So starting off with, you and I both predicted this with the Prague Lions getting their first win of the season. It was just time. There was just no way, that they were.
Yeah, no, we both saw it. We're like, they can't go winless, right? Like they got to get one.
They got to get one.
And they do it in an ugly fashion.
Oh, hideous game. A game that involves 1 touchdown scored, or actually did. Oh, no, Fairvar, I thought their 6 points were 2 field goals. No, they got a touchdown. Okay, so 2 touchdowns scored and 1 safety. A missed extra point. Yeah, just an ugly game through and through.
I love a 9-6 score with a safety. That's awesome.
Dude, that is such like a 1912, pre-NFL football score. That's like a Harvard versus Princeton playing out in the yard, with their cheerleaders that have skirts down to their ankles type of score right there.
Oh yeah, no, this is like pre-merger, fucking when the Chiefs were in Dallas,
Yeah, back when we were relevant, it was long ago. Not really a whole lot to say because, again, ugly game. I didn't watch this one because I think this was like the 5 a.m. game or whatever. Didn't watch it. Glad I didn't watch it. But hey, shout out to the Prague Lions for getting their first win of the season.
The highlights were awesome, though. It was 7 minutes of punts. It's crazy.
I was going to say 7 minutes of punts and, third down stops.
Yep. Oh, dropped my keyboard.
But yeah, that takes us to a game that I was surprised. Man, I thought your team was going to kind of go into Frankfurt and go whoop some ass, and they got the ass whooped. What happened?
Pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong. I mean, the defense was playing terribly, and they were just letting Frankfurt get whatever they wanted. I mean, that was really the issue because, if you actually look at the offense of Madrid, it wasn't horrific, but their third down efficiency was just terrible. 4 from 15. Like they couldn't convert on third. They were punting the ball way too much. And Frankfurt was just moving the ball really efficiently. McKay had a great game, 19-26, 278, 3 touchdowns, and Int also had 97 yards on the ground. Platts Gunner had 87 yards on the ground. The Madrid rushing defense is just terrible. Yeah, and that's been their real issue. And I think that's going to be the main reason they're not going to win a playoff game this year. They actually have to watch out because, if they lose to Paris and everybody else keeps winning, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. They're going to be the team that's going to be on the outside looking in.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, that'd be so sad. But their running defense, it's just terrible. Like they cannot stop the run. And that's going to be terrible in the playoffs. If they can't learn to stop the run against whoever they get in the first round, they're a first round exit for sure.
Well, and their run defense has gotten so bad in the instance that Markel Castle was actually able to complete a pass because it was one of those jet sweep and around type of deals. They tossed him the ball, and then because they overcommitted so hard on this play that the other half of the field was just wide open because it was like Madrid finally was like, no, Markel Castle's not going to go run on us. And it was like, no, bitch, he's throwing. And, you can't have a glaring weakness that bad because then smart offensive coordinators are able to work with that. And they're able to say, okay, well, you're bad with the rush. I'm going to run it up the gut as much as I can, get as many yards on the ground, and then I'm going to have that one play in my back pocket, which was the Markel Castle throwing touchdown, and him just being like, all right, you're going to overcommit on this one play because there's a run coming. You can see the jet sweep happening, and then they're like, JK, just kidding. That was just to keep you on your toes. And I'm with you. I don't think that they'll win a playoff game simply because they cannot stop the run.
Which I find shocking that their line play is so bad on the defense when their line play on the offense is good.
Yeah.
You would think a team that struggles with a rush defense so bad in the Elf, it's probably because they don't have a lot of big guys, so they're probably really suck at blocking too. But it's no, they actually have a pretty good O-line, probably like a top 5 O-line in the league.
Oh yeah.
But their defensive line is terrible.
Yeah. I also felt like as much as, the O-line has performed well for Madrid, I do feel like Frankfurt was able to really get into the backfield and really disrupt things for Duncan. 21 of 41 is not good disgusting. I was going to say disgusting, but normally whenever I say that, it's a good thing. It's not a good thing to be basically 50% on your passes, especially when you're throwing 41 passes. And he was kind of running for his life. It's not something that we've really seen, to your point, with this Madrid team. But I'm looking at it here, and the Galaxy got 5 sacks. And that's just sacks. That's not talking about QB pressures,
any
hurries,
TFLs or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. They were all over.
Yeah, they played. The Frankfurt defense just played super well this game, and you can see it a lot with Patterson's stats. Like, Patterson just had a bad day, and I think it's just because their DB locked him up. And I think a lot of this team falls apart without Patterson stretching the ball downfield.
Agreed.
And it's exactly what happened. So I'm hoping they'll bounce back to Paris. Maybe this is their let's get this out of the way, go beat up Paris next week and, coast to the playoffs. But yeah, like I said, if they lose to Paris next week, they're probably out of the playoffs. I think Tyrol and Munich would probably both pass them. Yeah.
Yeah, because this was a must-win game for Tyrol, and they won it somehow, which, we can dive into that too. Raiders Tyrol beat the previously undefeated Stuttgart Surge 45-42 on a last-minute drive that, the Raiders played their offense at least played a damn near perfect game. And honestly, I know that Stuttgart put up 42 points, but their defense played a lot better than those 42 points show. Because they did pick off Hennessy twice, who Hennessy has not thrown 2 interceptions in a game all season. So, they were definitely.
He probably had. I don't know what his stats are, but he probably had only 5 ints on the year, right?
He only had 3
before that game.
He only had 3 before that.
So now he's at 5?
Yeah, now he's at 5.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the discourse between me, Danny, and some other folks on Twitter, but it's funny because now we're cursed. Every active and healthy player that has interviewed with us, their team has lost the following week. We had to say active and healthy because, we interviewed Jordan Bois. And then,
Bois, and their team did fine.
But every player that we have interviewed that is playing for their team the following week, they've lost this year. So, not looking too good on us.
Should have saved the Zach Edwards interview for this week.
Nah, hey, listen, we'll get to our predictions for the upcoming week. But I got things for Paris and positive things for Paris here shortly. But yeah, any last thoughts on the Stuttgart Raiders Tyrol game other than just holy shit, I was not expecting that to be the outcome?
No, it was a great game, super high scoring, very competitive, really close. Tyrol has had the best games all season. That's really just been the reality of it. For whatever reason, the game of the week, it's usually Tyrol playing. So they're probably one of the most exciting. They're probably the top 3 most exciting team in the Elf. So.
Actually, real quick before we do go to the next game, I do want to shout out N'Kosi Perry specifically because I've been harsh on him on this podcast because he has been turnover prone. 4 total touchdowns, no turnovers of any sort, fumbling, interceptions, anything like that. So shout out N'Kosi Perry. He outplayed Riley Hennessy, which is a sentence I never thought that I would utter. Yeah. Played his ass off. Big shout out to you, N'Kosi. Keep killing it. And this was an exciting game. I caught the fourth quarter of this game and was just in shock the whole time. I was like, holy shit, this is actually happening. So there's that. That takes us to the Paris Musketeers, who defeated the Cologne Centurions 57-7 in Cologne. I didn't think that the ass whooping would be this bad. I knew Paris would win, but I thought it'd be a little bit more competitive this particular game.
No, yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I had a feeling Cologne wasn't really going to be able to compete too well in this game, but I didn't think they would get blown out. So, again, like we talked about, Cologne, they're not terrible, but they just can't compete with the good teams right now, and this just goes to show it. And Paris is further proving that they are one of the top teams,
Yeah, I just really thought that, I really thought that with the momentum that Cologne was starting to build,
was having
wins. Isaiah Weed was really starting to ball out, and things were starting to click, especially on the offense. And I figured that they would lose, but I thought it would be like a shootout type of loss. Where I figured Paris would score, somewhere between 35 and 57 is a bit excessive, but 35 and 42. But I thought Cologne would also put up their 28-35 as well. And man, that offense.
Yeah, I was expecting like a 2-3 score loss, not like a 6 score loss,
Right. And I was expecting it to be one of those things where whenever you added up the total points and everything, we're looking at it as like this was an 80-point game because Paris scored, 40 whatever, and Cologne scored, in the low 30s. And it's like, damn, that was fun. That was exciting. But no. Was not the case. Paris's defense, man, they looked angry. I don't know if you caught the game, but them boys was hitting. And
it's a good defense. I mean, Paris has a pretty underrated defense, and I think they can make a lot of noise especially if they play like they did last week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that the defense, I wouldn't be surprised if Coach chewed them out for how many points they let Berlin score. And granted, Berlin probably has arguably the most just on paper high-powered offense in the ELF. But yeah, man, they were not having it this week. Very excited for Paris. Zach Edwards had a monstrous game, 441 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground, so 6 tuds total. And then Bertellen had a huge game, 206 yards receiving. Mitchell had a big game, 179 yards receiving. They both had 2 touchdowns apiece. I mean, this Paris team's got the stuff. I think that there's still a step down from the Rhine, Vienna, and potentially Stuttgart makeup, but it's not a big step.
No, it's not.
When things are clicking, at least it's not a big step. So, fantastic game, especially on the offensive end, but the defensive end too. A game that made me very sad, which I'm gonna be honest, I haven't even watched the past 2 to 3 Barcelona games, man. It's been brutal. God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. And brother, let me tell you right now, this soldier's not very strong anymore. You know, we didn't say the score because we were talking about how great this past week was with the close games and the parity and the upsets. And we lost 90-0 to Munich, which is the worst loss in ELF history. And yeah, I think I'm ready to move on.
So before we do, I wrote an article about this game. Make sure to go check it out on the American Football International website.
Shameless plug. Love it.
Yeah, shameless plug, you know, that's how it goes. But there's a couple of really alarming stats that I want to bring out from this game, just to put in perspective, like, how insane this would be, you know, if we were to put it in NFL metrics. So 34 points in a quarter has only been achieved once in the NFL, which is as many points that the Munich Ravens put up in the fourth quarter. This was back in 2007 when the Detroit Lions outscored the Chicago Bears 34-14 in the fourth quarter to defeat them 37-27. Previously, the most points scored in a quarter was 31 back on September 13th, 1981 by the Atlanta Falcons. And another crazy stat about this game is the Munich Ravens had 81 tackles. This would break the NFL season game record of 80 tackles in a game, and that was by Houston in 2003. So that's just how dominant Munich was defensively, that they would have broken the NFL tackle record, as well as they would have tied the NFL scoring record in a quarter.
Yeah. And something else to note, just with how brutal this game was, you know, you would see 90-0 and you would think surely there's got to be some interceptions, pick sixes, you know, all these things. Not a single interception was thrown this entire game. Only 2 fumbles were lost on the Barcelona end. It was truly just they could not do anything. It was a lot of 3 and outs, a lot of if we didn't 3 and out this time, then we got 1 first down and then we would be out on downs. And it just, yeah. And I mean, also the Ravens, didn't win time of possession either. They had 19 minutes of time of possession versus Barcelona's 40, but it was just 2 plays score, 1 play score, 3 plays score, kickoff return for a touchdown. Like, brutal.
I mean, Barcelona was 2 of 17 on third down. Like, they couldn't convert. I mean, they had a total of 155 yards. They had a total of 6 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Like, that's insanity.
Yeah, that's bad. That is bad. Yeah, I don't think that we need to harp on this game a whole lot longer, but I will say this, you know, I have been true to my Barcelona fandom, and, you know, I'm already in one toxic relationship with the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't need to be in another toxic relationship. And after this week, I had enough people tell me that I'm justified in moving on, that, hey, look, I'm a hot commodity. I'm out on the market. I'm trying to see. You know, so I don't know what that looks like.
Hey, you can't equate Barcelona to the Cowboys. The Cowboys have never had anything remotely
like
close to what Barcelona's had this season to the entire Cowboys history. Yeah. Like, not even comparable.
Yeah, 90-0. That is, I feel like that is a last straw that everybody understands. And so I don't know where I'm going to take my fandom. I've flirted with the idea of, you know, going back to the ex-girlfriend of Raiders Tyrol, since I was supposed to be a fan of theirs. I've also kind of thought about, I'm like, you know what, fuck the French, but you know what, fuck Texas. So I might as well be a fan of Paris. So we'll get there when we get there. I'm just kind of spectating. You know, I'm on Christian Mingle right now, you know, meeting all the hot singles in the league. Seeing where we can go with it, okay? Farmers only.
You hear me? Prague.
No, I'm not switching to fucking Prague. I mean, it'd be a step up, but that's not a good step.
Not a great step up.
So who else was on the docket? Okay, let's talk more
next
positive
game was
here.
Yeah, great game between Panthers and Thunder. Absolutely electric.
Phenomenal game. Yeah. One of those things that I was kind of hoping that Roslav would figure it out like at the end, and just didn't work out. But no, yeah, this was a fun game. Do want to shout out the rushing duo for the Panthers of Brzozowski and Norwood. Brzozowski 168, 3 touchdowns. Norwood had 155 on the ground himself. Norwood also kind of played a impromptu quarterback. Was 14 of 19 for 84 yards and a touchdown, which 14 of 19 for 84 is
it's a stat line.
It's a stat line.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vroslav is, I mean, they have heart, man. And I really respect them as a team. They've had a lot of shit hit the fan this year, and they've fought through it.
Yeah. I'm sad they didn't do well this year. I think it's a team that, they have a ton of fans. They have a ton of support. They're an exciting team. I think they just got unlucky this year.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we'll see them in the playoffs next year.
Me too. Yeah.
So,
no, yeah. With how good their fan base is, like that is a team that needs to be in the playoffs because it's good for the league. To be honest, they've had the highest average attendance this season. You want the team with the highest average attendance to make the playoffs. It's good.
Absolutely.
For the league. So yeah, hopefully, really. If they can figure out the quarterback thing and then beef up that defense, because poor Wentland, besides him, man, ain't nobody on that defense. My brother AJ had 19 tackles. 19.
He's a beast.
Absolute animal, but it's just him. So figure out the quarterback.
19 tackles in a game is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that is. Bro, that is playing Madden right there. That is playing NCAA 25.
And then Myron on Berlin had 18. What?
Did he? Oh, wow. He sure did. That's crazy.
That's unreal.
But yeah, for Berlin, Sullivan had a crazy stat line, 35 of 54 passing attempts for 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then also had a touchdown on the ground as well.
Dude, most tackles in an NFL game was by David Harris with 20. So both of these guys came close to breaking that record. I'll have to keep an eye out that for future elf games. I bet somebody has had more than
I'm sure for the elf game, yeah. But yeah, Action Jackson, 10 receptions, 131 yards and a touchdown. I mean, the ball got spread around. Sullivan hit 7 targets, pretty easy to see why, at least offensively, Berlin did so well. Vroslav just didn't have quite enough in the tank.
Yeah,
is what
unfortunate.
It is. Yeah, but phenomenal game. I wish I would have caught this one. I'm really mad I didn't. But yeah, phenomenal game. And then the last game on our docket, and we don't really have to spend a ton of time on this, but Hamburg visits Rhine, intercountry rivals, and gets that ass whooped 51-2. And
at least the first quarter was close.
Well, I was going to say that first quarter was like, okay, 6-2. Hamburg's still in this. And then Ryan did that thing that they always do where, an opponent might hang around for a quarter and then all of a sudden Tunga hits you for like 3 touchdowns or, in this case, Jadrian Clark throws for 4 touchdowns and that's all she wrote.
That's all that needed to happen.
Yep. So it's looking like Tunga's probably not going to eclipse that 2,000-yard mark, unfortunately, but the amount of touchdowns that he has on the season is fucking ridiculous.
Just going to take a look. How many yards is he off now?
I think last time I checked, he's at...
Oh, he's at 1,400. He would need some insane games.
Yeah, if I'm Ryan, these last couple of games, because Ryan's got a playoff spot. I believe with this win, they officially locked in a playoff spot. You're going to make the playoffs. Don't hurt Tunga, and Jadrian Clark's been playing better. I know that he had 2 interceptions today. One of them was a tipped interception. So, as a Dak Prescott fan, I give people leeway on those. So he had 1 interception in my brain. But yeah, Ryan looks terrifying. And, I've seen a lot of people having, even despite the 1 loss to Madrid, having them at number 1 on their power power rankings, and I don't blame them, man. Especially now that Jadrian Clark is finally starting to play like Jadrian Clark. That team is stacked.
Yeah, I would put I would put Ryan at 1 now. With Stuttgart losing to Tirol, I think Ryan's the best team in the ELF right now.
Yeah. I would put Vienna as number 1 if it weren't for strength of schedule, which ironically enough, I mentioned that in my Riley Hennessy interview, which shameless plug here. You can check out a exclusive one-on-one interview with me and Stuttgart Surge quarterback Riley Hennessy on our YouTube channel at 4th Down Fiasco. But I had mentioned that of like, hey, a lot of people aren't wanting to put y'all at number 1 just because of strength of schedule. Same thing with Vienna, and he was talking about how that was crap, but I still hold on to that a little bit. It does play a factor in my brain for who I put at number 1.
No, it definitely does for me too. I mean, I don't think the gap between Vienna and Ryan is big. I think Vienna absolutely could beat Ryan in the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely.
There's just something about Ryan, man. They're just so good.
Yeah, and I am such a if your offense is based around an elite level running back, I just love that shit. I've always loved that shit.
Dude, yeah.
And that's so hard.
That's the running back bias in me coming out, It's
yeah. And it's one of those things of like, if you have a strong running game, you are a hard team to beat. Because if you get up in any situation, then the other team's fucked pretty much, And so... And plus their defense has just been playing lights out as of late. So got to give them the nod. But we are running low on time here. Do we want to do a quick rapid fire through this upcoming slate of games for week 13 before we end the show?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll say the teams. We'll both say who we think's going to win, and we'll wrap up there.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
We'll start off with Madrid at Paris. I'm not going to pick Paris just because I want Madrid to make the playoffs, but it's probably Paris,
Hey, dog, it's your team. It's okay.
Yeah, so
it's okay.
We'll hopefully they'll win.
Hey, at least you have a team that's worth, putting your neck out on the line for like that,
What, you don't want to pick Barcelona every week?
No. Hell no. Please relegate Barcelona so I don't feel as bad about moving on.
They're not going to relegate, man. They're going to shut down.
Yeah. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of blowouts this week, and another one that is on the docket. I mean, Enthroners, Vienna Vikings.
Yeah, it's Vienna easily.
Yeah,
and it will not be any sort of close.
No. Hey, maybe Vienna can avenge Barcelona and whoop Farivar worse than we got whooped. I doubt it, but
yeah.
Munich Ravens, Helvetic Mercenaries.
It's going to be another blowout, unfortunately. I think Munich's just going to stomp the floor with them.
Yep. Frankfurt Galaxy, Wrocław Panthers. This should be a fun one. I'm going to go... I'm going to go Frankfurt.
I'm going to go different with you. I'm going to go for Wrocław. I think these two teams are pretty close in talent with each other, especially after Frankfurt won last week against Madrid. But I don't know. With how close it was against Berlin, I think they could probably handle Frankfurt.
Fair enough. I'm just taking the momentum win. Frankfurt's win over Madrid was big. So Barcelona at Stuttgart Surge. This might be a worse loss than last week.
I just don't think it's possible. It could. I mean, it could, but man, if they lose by 100, yikes.
Yeah, big yikes. Cologne Centurion at Hamburg Sea Devils. I'm gonna go Cologne on this one. This will be a good game. I feel like
this should be good too. I think this will be a pretty close competitive one. Cologne's probably the better team than Hamburg at this point, though.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, definitely Cologne on that one. And then lastly, Berlin Thunder at Rhein Fire. Now, before we say anything, is this going to be the upset?
I don't think so, unfortunately. Okay. But it's possible. I mean,
I was hoping to get you to choose the upset. I'm not feeling ballsy enough to choose the upset. So
yeah, me either. I just don't. I mean, like we were just talking about, Ryan's just so good.
Yeah, they are. So, well, With that, any last comments about the European League of Football that you have?
No, not particularly. Like I said, the last week was a lot of fun, minus the elephant we don't need to speak about anymore.
Yep.
Hopefully some of these games that are supposed to be blowouts will be a little bit closer than what we saw from Barcelona last week. But playoffs are heating up and we're almost there. So exciting times.
Yeah. And, a couple of things for those of y'all who have made it this far along in the pod. And, I do look at our analytics and there's normally about 4 to 5 of you who do. So thank you, whoever that is. And if you haven't already, you can download. Danny has finished up all 17 teams for NCAA 25. So you can download any of the ELF teams for NCAA 25 and play with them. The rosters still have randomized names. Unfortunately, there isn't a patch for that just yet. We're hoping that they make an adjustment so we can actually give the players their names. And then also here in the coming weeks, be on the lookout for an article from me and American Football International going through MVP picks. So for those of y'all who read the midseason MVP article, which was a lot of fun to do and really cool to get to dissect everybody's career midway through the season. We're doing it again, but for the entirety of the ELF season, so all 14 weeks. I will. I'll give y'all my pick. I'll also talk to the Fourth Down Fiasco guys, Tanner, Danny, and see who they have. I might also even talk to some of our other friends, Jamal Clay, Matt Bresington, Alex Malchow, those guys, and see who they have. I'm always willing to put those picks in. So we've got that on the horizon. But yeah, other than that, thank you again so much for watching the show, or listening to the show rather. If you made it this far, we greatly appreciate it. Again, we ask that you rate us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The best way for us to grow the show. You can also follow us on social media. We are at @4thdown_pod on Twitter and at 4thdown Fiasco on Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, this has been Jordan and Tanner saying so long. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see y'all next week.
Peace out.
And I'm gonna keep doing them both because they make me feel good.